Welcome to this deep dive. Today we're exploring something that I think touches basically everyone. It's the psychology of the frozen choice.
Yeah, the frozen choice.
Right. We're really looking at that invisible, just agonizing threshold so many of us get stuck on.
Uh-huh.
That daily silent tug of war between freedom and safety.
Oh, absolutely.
And our mission here isn't just to talk about, feeling stuck. We really want to examine the exact mechanics of why we trap ourselves in situations we actively want to leave.
Right, and how to actually, move through that paralysis.
Exactly. And you know the feeling I'm talking about. The person listening, you're standing at the edge of something, but it's not a literal cliff with sweeping cinematic music playing. It's right in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday.
I love that you said that because the quiet, mundane edges are honestly the sharpest.
Yeah.
It's the resignation letter that's just been, fermenting in your drafts folder for 3 months.
Oh, wow, yes.
Or the difficult conversation you punt to tomorrow again. Or just that automatic reflex to swallow your actual truth when someone asks how you are, and you default to that hollow, I'm fine.
Which we all do, constantly.
Right. We spend an enormous amount of our lives rushing past this feeling, trying to outrun the stuckness by just filling our schedules. But I really want to invite you, the person listening to us right now, to actually slow down.
To take a breath.
Yeah. Acknowledge that ordinary Tuesday moment. Because you know what you want. Or at the very least, you sense it.
You feel it in your body.
Exactly. There's a physical pull in your chest. A whisper right beneath your ribs that says, this isn't it. This isn't you.
My feet just won't move, though. I feel that pull, but then I instantly justify my hesitation. I disguise this deep, slow self-betrayal as something noble, like prudence,
Oh, being responsible.
Exactly. I tell myself, it's responsible to stay. I need more data. If I just wait, maybe the path will become totally clear.
Right.
And it almost feels like my brain treats a boring dead-end situation as safer than a new opportunity simply because the misery is predictable, which honestly seems like a terrible evolutionary design.
Well, the funny thing is your brain is actually functioning exactly as it evolved to.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We stay frozen because we fundamentally misdefine both safety and freedom.
How so?
So, from a neurological perspective, your nervous system operates on predictive coding. It's constantly calculating the energy required to survive.
Okay.
So if you are in a familiar situation that isn't working, let's say a career that pays well but just crushes your spirit, it feels terrible. But your nervous system has 100% survival data for that scenario.
Oh, wow. It knows the exact shape of that pain.
Exactly. It knows you won't die from it today. Leaving, on the other hand, feels like holding your breath underwater. You have zero data on whether there is oxygen on the other side.
That is, wow. So staying feels like breathing, even if the air in the room is slowly suffocating you.
Yes. We choose the suffocation we know over the oxygen we can't see.
That is so incredibly bleak, but also makes so much sense.
It does. Because safety, in that frozen state, is perceived entirely as an external circumstance.
Like a steady paycheck.
Right. A steady paycheck, a familiar relationship dynamic, a routine. We trick ourselves into believing that safety lives in the environment, and then we think freedom is this loud, bold, dramatic exit, burning the building down.
Right, flipping the desk over.
Exactly. But freedom isn't an action. Freedom is just the quiet internal permission to simply want, even when wanting feels dangerous.
But see, waiting isn't neutral. That's the part that always catches me.
Say more about that.
Well, I always fall back on, I just need to wait until I have it all figured out. But every single day you postpone your truth, the waiting actually changes you. You're feeling a version of yourself that fundamentally believes it doesn't deserve to be seen. You start to internalize the idea that your needs are simply too much, or that you have to pay a toll of absolute perfection just to earn the right to make a move.
And you slowly become a stranger to your own longing.
Yes. It feels like building a cage out of borrowed beliefs. Like, if I choose myself, I'll be selfish. Or if I rock the boat, I'll be abandoned.
Wow.
We construct this invisible prison out of things we were taught by others, rather than actual iron bars.
That image of the cage made of borrowed beliefs, that perfectly captures why the Gestalt approach brings us forcefully back to the here and now.
Right.
because your mind wants to escape the present tension. It jumps backward, pattern matching to a past failure, like last time I tried to speak up, I was mocked.
Or it leaps forward into catastrophic futures. How will I pay the rent?
Exactly. But neither of those timelines exist right now. In this exact breath, your lungs are filling with air. The floor is supporting your feet. You already have the right to exist in this trembling moment without needing to prove your readiness.
Let's get into the mechanics of this, though, because if we recognize our cage is made of these borrowed beliefs, how exactly are we trapping ourselves?
Right, the actual process.
Yeah, I want to understand the short circuit happening in my brain when I feel that pull beneath my ribs, but I just fail to act on it.
So the short circuit happens when we lose contact with the living, sensing present self. The Gestalt model uses something called the cycle of experience to map how we naturally interact with our needs. It's a very biological and psychological rhythm.
How does it start?
It begins with sensation. Your mouth gets dry, or maybe you feel a flutter in your stomach. Next comes awareness, where you actually interpret that sensation. So, I am thirsty, or I am angry about what my boss just said.
Okay, so far so good. The system is working.
Right. Then comes mobilization. Your body gathers the energy to meet the need. Your breathing changes, your muscles prep.
Like getting ready to move.
Exactly. Following that is action.
Yeah.
Getting a glass of water, or actually speaking up in the meeting. And finally, there is satisfaction and withdrawal, where the need is met and you return to baseline.
So where does it break down for us stuck people?
The breakdown usually happens right at mobilization. Yeah, you feel the anger, you know you should speak up, the energy surges, and then you interrupt it.
I interrupt it by making like a self-deprecating joke instead of defending my work.
Yes.
Or I suddenly decide I'm just being overly sensitive and I shut down.
Exactly. Those are your survival mechanisms stepping in to hit the brakes. Instead of moving the energy into action, the nervous system reroutes it into a socially acceptable buffer.
God, that's so true.
We might adopt a rule we learned in childhood telling ourselves, good people keep the peace. Or we might use humor to completely deflect the tension. Or we might just blend our desires with the room, convincing ourselves that whatever the group wants is what we want.
I want to push back on one of those mechanisms for a second, specifically projection.
Okay, let's hear it.
When I project that the world isn't safe, or people will abandon me if I set a boundary, is that really just turning a mirror outward? Because it feels so real. It feels like I'm reading the room accurately. But am I really just treating a present opportunity as if it's the ghost of someone who abandoned me, like 20 years ago?
Well, here's the thing. The amygdala, the part of your brain that is always scanning for threats, it doesn't know what year it is.
Wow.
It only knows patterns. If you needed to be seen as a child and you were punished for being too loud, or if you needed someone to stay and they left, those moments didn't end neatly.
They just lingered.
They froze in your nervous system. We actually call this unfinished business.
Unfinished business.
Yeah, it is unmet needs still pulsing right beneath the surface. So when freedom or a new choice knocks on your door today, your amygdala pattern matches it to that past trauma and screams, danger.
And my body reacts to that danger physically. Even if my logical adult brain knows I'm perfectly safe in this conference room, my body remembers every single time I said no to myself just to survive.
Yes, exactly.
I can feel it as like an embodied avoidance. My shoulders instantly hunch forward to protect my chest. My breath gets super shallow. I break eye contact.
You are literally bracing your body against your own aliveness.
That's exactly what it feels like.
And suppressing that desire, shoving the mobilized energy back down, it requires immense muscular and psychological effort. It dims your vitality.
It takes work to hold it all back.
So much work. That physical posture of withdrawal is the exhaustion you feel at the end of an ordinary Tuesday where nothing technically went wrong, but you betrayed yourself 10 tiny times.
So, if I understand right, the Gestalt approach leans heavily on phenomenology to fix this. Basically stripping away the narrative and focusing on the raw sensation.
Right.
But honestly, I've always struggled with this step.
How come?
Well, if I'm terrified to send that resignation letter, how does noticing my jaw is clenched actually change anything? It just feels like I'm documenting my own misery instead of fixing my life. I really don't see the mechanism of change there.
That is the most common frustration people have with this work.
Oh, good. It's not just me.
No, not at all. But the mechanism lies in how attention actually alters your brain networks.
Okay.
When you are spinning in the narrative, I'm going to ruin my career, I'll go broke, you are activating the default mode network in the brain. That handles rumination, past and future time travel, identity stuff.
Right.
And this network feeds the amygdala, which keeps the alarm bell ringing. But when you shift to phenomenology, simply describing the raw sensory data of the clenched jaw or the hollow chest without any judgment, you force the brain to switch to the direct experiencing network.
Oh, wow. So I'm basically pulling the plug on the storytelling engine.
Exactly. You are downregulating the threat response. You aren't magically solving your career dilemma, but you are bringing your nervous system back online into the present moment.
And once I'm there,
From that regulated place, you can actually begin a dialogue with the frightened part of yourself.
I love that because I've always disliked the idea of like whipping myself into shape when I'm stuck.
Yeah, that really works.
It implies the frightened part of me is an enemy that needs to be conquered.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm regulating my nervous system, responsibility takes on a totally different meaning. It's literal responsibility, the ability to respond to my whole self.
Yes.
I always think of it like holding two hands out to cup a delicate flame.
Oh, I like that.
Right. One hand deeply honors the fear,
Yeah.
validating that it kept me safe in the past, and the other hand fiercely trusts the longing.
Cupping the flame is a brilliant way to conceptualize it, because that protective mechanism, it only knows the language of control, but what it desperately wants is connection.
It just wants to know it's not alone.
Right. It wants to know you aren't going to abandon it in your rush to be free. When you place a hand on your chest and tell that frightened part, I know you're trying to protect me, but I can hold us both now, the texture of the tension changes entirely.
It softens.
It really does.
But let's be realistic about what happens next.
Yeah.
When I finally make that contact and I hold the fear alongside the longing, the fear doesn't just evaporate, does it?
No, it doesn't.
Because I think I spent years believing that choosing freedom meant I'd wake up one day completely fearless. I thought if I made the right choice, the tension would just disappear.
Yeah, that's a really common myth.
But you're implying that choosing freedom doesn't end the tension at all.
Choosing freedom transforms the fear from a barricade into a companion.
Wow.
Freedom and safety are not opposing destinations you have to choose between. They are qualities of contact with yourself.
Qualities of contact.
Yeah. If you make a choice entirely from fear, clutching at control and staying small, you might feel a superficial sense of safety, but you are absolutely not free.
Right.
Conversely, if you rebel and just blow up your life recklessly just to escape the pressure, you might feel a rush of freedom, but you are entirely ungrounded and unsafe.
So the magic happens when the two integrate.
Exactly. When you choose from presence, from that grounded contact with your whole self, self-freedom becomes the safety. Safety becomes the rich, fertile soil from which freedom can naturally grow.
That's beautiful.
True safety is never going to be found in staying put in a suffocating room. It is found in the absolute, undeniable certainty that you are with yourself no matter what environment you walk into.
That completely reframes the entire concept of the threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah. Safety is the presence of trust in yourself. Freedom is the presence of choice made from wholeness rather than fragmentation.
You nailed it. And the Gestalt concept of closure through awareness operates right here.
How so?
Well, you don't get over the past trauma that made you freeze. You feel it all the way through, finally allowing that mobilized energy we talked about to complete its cycle.
Yeah.
You come home to the parts of you that were left behind in those frozen moments. You mentally hand those borrowed beliefs back to the caregivers or the society that gave them to you, acknowledging they were survival tools, but you just no longer need them to hide.
Which means transformation isn't always the dramatic, cinematic quitting of a job.
Not at all.
It isn't always ending a relationship in a fiery blaze. It happens in these tiny, almost invisible micro moments of courage that nobody else even sees.
Yes. It might be clicking send on that email, letting your hands visibly shake while you do it.
Yeah.
It might be staying in a relationship, but finally speaking a difficult truth instead of swallowing it to maintain a false peace.
Yeah.
Or it might be doing absolutely nothing at all on the outside, just sitting quietly with your longing until it stops feeling like a terrifying threat and starts acting like an internal compass.
It's an integrity that doesn't require an audience.
Beautifully put.
It's just the internal alignment of saying, I am choosing myself. I am allowing myself to want.
And you never need to prove you are ready to the universe. You don't need to guarantee a perfect, happy outcome before you take a step.
Because life is a continuous unfolding.
Exactly. Every single time you honor your present truth, you stitch your nervous system back together, you close a little loop of unfinished business, and you reclaim a piece of your vitality.
This deep dive really dismantles the agonizing binary we trap ourselves in.
It really does.
We spend so much energy staring at the threshold, obsessing over whether to stay or go, whether to play it safe or risk everything. We treat the threshold as a brutal multiple choice test. But the threshold itself is just an invitation to look inward. The agony of being stuck is just our body's alarm system begging us to pay attention to ourselves.
The stuckness is your own life force refusing to be ignored any longer.
Wow.
And as we wrap up this exploration, I want to leave you, the listener, with a slightly different angle to consider.
Okay.
We talk so much about the fear of failure, or the fear of the unknown keeping us frozen on that threshold. But what if the fear keeping you trapped isn't about failing at all?
What do you mean?
What if you are actually terrified of your own immense vitality? Stepping into freedom means you will be powerful. And power requires a level of visibility, a level of taking up space that your protective mechanisms have spent a lifetime avoiding.
That is so true.
What if the real choice has never been about staying or leaving, but simply, will I finally allow myself to be powerful enough to exist fully?
Are we more afraid of our chains or of our own wings?
Exactly. So take a slow breath right now. Drop your shoulders. If you can, just place a hand over your chest. Notice the rhythm there.
Just feeling the pulse.
And whisper just to yourself, with no one else listening, the truth. You have been too afraid to let take up space. You do not need to have the whole path figured out today. You only need to be willing to feel the ground beneath your feet right now.
Right now.
The most radical act of freedom you will ever commit isn't packing a bag and leaving. It's finally irrevocably choosing to belong to yourself.
We spend so much time wishing for the clean, binary clarity of an X-ray to tell us exactly what to do. But clarity doesn't arrive from agonizing over the future.
No, it doesn't.
It arrives in the quiet, steady, physical presence of meeting yourself exactly where you are, right here on the edge of an ordinary Tuesday. Take care of yourselves.